Morning guys, how's it going? So today is alternator day. So my alternator is the original alternator with 390,000 Ks on it. The regulator in the back seems to be a little bit slow, so it takes, maybe 30 seconds to sort of kick in from normal battery voltage up to 14.5 volts. So that's the reason I'm replacing this alternator before we go to the Cape, is just for the off chance that all the water up there decides to finally kill it. And with that laggy regulator, I think it's probably a good choice to just replace it. So it comes with a new wiring plug as well. This should keep me and my batteries fully charged on the trip. And I'm probably going to take the old alternator just as a backup, just in case something does happen to the new one. So I've also got another bunch of goodies to fit. So I got from Air on Board some Diff breathers. So it's like a little Diff breather kit. So you get all the connections, the little mount and everything. You get the line to run it. And other things I got, some exhaust mounts, because I broke some of mine going up Little Red, and just some sway bar bushes because my sway bar links are sort of kicking off to the side and it's worn the bushes weird, so I'm going to replace them too. So that's the aim for today, is to get the alternator in and hopefully the sway bar bushes and the Diff breathers. So I'm ready to start pulling down the cruiser to fit the alternator. I'm just going to take the airbox out and hopefully try and feed it out the back so I don't have to take the radiator out or the fan shroud or anything. Alright, so I've undone the 3 bolts holding the airbox in, taken the intake pipe off from the snorkel and also taken the intake pipe off from the turbo. I'm just going to take the top off the airbox and get rid of that. Get that out of the way. And get the rest of the airbox out as well. Plug under here, got to get off. And that should all come out. Cool. So now it looks like I should have enough room to get the alternator out, so we should be good. So there's the alternator down there, just down here. So with the airbox out I should have enough room to sort of bring it back and then out, hopefully. Well, that's my plan anyway. We'll see how it goes. I'll just take the plug off, take the electrical battery connection off, and take the bolts off, take the belt off, and then I'll start trying to remove it from the actual car. So there's the old alternator. So it's an original Toyota Denso alternator, and a bit of a wiggle, and it just came out of that bottom bracket down there. So it came out fairly easily. So here's the old alternator next to the new one. So you can see this one is just full of mud and dirt and water and years of abuse being a full drive. And hopefully this new one will be really good and give us another couple of years. So I'm just going to have to do a little bit of soldering for this new wiring connection. So it comes with a new plug for the alternator, because one of the common failures is that the plugs get water and crap in them and the pins corrode, and then that causes a bad connection, and in turn your alternator doesn't work correctly. So I'm going to have to solder that on before connecting the plug. And other than that, I'll just start tightening all the bolts up, putting the power connection cable back on, and putting the belts on. Alrighty, so the new alternator's all in. So I've done up the power, battery positive connection, belts are all tight, top and bottom bolts are tight, and now I've just got to fix this plug. So when you get the new alternator, it gives you a little plug adapter, and I've just got to snip the end off this one, solder these 3 wires to those 3 wires, and then it'll have a new plug on there, so there won't be any bad connections. So I'll do that now. So I'm just going to snip back this cover on the wiring and trim off this plug, and then solder on this new plug that's come with the new alternator. So just keep that for reference of where the pins go, and that should be enough wiring to strip back and solder onto here. So I'll just strip this back as well. So I'll just use these wire strippers just to strip the ends off. These are pretty handy. Rid of all that, so they're bare now. And I'll just strip the ends off these wires. Get rid of that. Now I'll just chop up some heat shrink to cover the wires once I'm done soldering. I'll put that onto the plug. Just like that. So those 3 are connected now. I'm just going to get the soldering iron, heat it up, and start soldering those connections together. Alright, so the soldering iron's pretty much up to temp. So this is a gas soldering iron. So I'll just put a little bit on there, hold it under the wiring. And once it gets up to temp, that wiring should absorb the soldering. There we go. So now I'll just solder these other 2. Perfect. Alrighty, so I've just got the heat shrink over all those connections, and they're all soldered up. So now just use a lighter just to shrink that heat shrink down and cover all those connections. Cool, so now that they're soldered and covered, I'm just going to tape up the rest of the wiring, just so no dirt and crap gets in there. Some electrical tape. Cool, so now the new alternator plug's on and it's all ready to go. Cool. So the last piece of the puzzle is the alternator plug. Put that on. Cool. Just put that back on. And I'll just tie that wiring out of the way, zip tie that up. So now it's just airbox back in, and then I'll start it up and test that it all works. So everything's back together now. Airbox is back in. All the piping, the new alternator's down there, all fitted, and it's running well and charging the batteries properly, so that's good. That's what we want. So we shouldn't have any issues with the alternator. Cool. So I've got to replace my exhaust mounts. If you can see that, that mount up at the top there is broken. So I'm going to pull that mount out and the other 2, and replace them with these new ones. So I won't have any more rattles or vibrations from the exhaust. So I'll do that now. So here's the old exhaust mount. You can see it's separated. So I've just put one of these in there. New mount. And it stopped the exhaust rattling around. So that's awesome. Another thing checked off. The next thing I'm going to replace is the sway bar bushes. So this one sort of kicked off to the side and worn the bush really bad. So I'm going to replace that one and also this one over here as well. Alrighty, so now the new sway bar bushes are in. They're all good. And that one's in as well. So now I'm going to move on to running the diff breathers. So now I'm just going to start running the diff breathers. So this is a air on board kit, $50. You get 4-pot breather with all your hose, all your zip ties, all your mounting hardware, and little fittings to go on top of the diff, and some self-tapping screws to mount that to the firewall or wherever you're going to mount it. So it's a pretty good little kit for the price. So I'm just going to start with a rear diff, then do the front, and then have a look at the transmission breathers, and just run it all up to the front of the car, and then mount this little unit up on the firewall somewhere, and connect them up. Alright, so I've run the rear diff breather, so just in here, and then run it all along right up to the front of the car. So these are the little fittings that it comes with. So all you do is unscrew the original fitting in here, and then that's the same thread, so then that just screws straight into there, and then you can just push the hose into that and it locks in, and then you can just run the hoses to the front. So it's pretty easy to install, so they're really good, and they are all the same thread, so it made it really easy. So this is the front diff. The front diff needed a right angle fitting, because that's what I had from standard. So with the kit it came with a right angle little hose fitting, so I've just removed the old one and fitted that one, and then run the lines with my air locker lines right up to the top of the engine. Then I'll show you what I've done with the gearbox one. So down the back of the engine and right at the top of the gearbox there's a little breather for the gearbox and transfer case. So they all sort of intertwine into one breather. So all I've done is taken the fitting out of the end of that and push this plastic hose into that rubber hose, and then put a hose clamp on it and run the lines up. So the transfer case and gearbox is all one. So I've only needed to use 3 of the breathers, and then I've just run the lines just all along the firewall, and decided to mount the breathers here because this seemed like the most easiest spot to access all the lines and fittings and stuff. So it's all finished now, so the diff breathers are all in, so that's another thing to check off the list. And that's about all I'm going to do today. I'm just going to finish up now. I've ticked quite a few things off the list. So I've done the sway bar bushes, the alternator, the exhaust rubber mount, and also the diff breathers today. So I think that's a pretty good effort for today, and I'll do a bit more next weekend. So thanks for watching part 2 of Cape York Prep, and if you're enjoying these videos or any of my other videos and you wouldn't mind giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel, that would be awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching. Cheers.